And we are live. Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. Today is the 6th of June. It's 2017, and you guys have been asking me for about 7-8 months so far. I finally got a hold of him, the man, the myth, the legend. Ladies and gentlemen, 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗲. What's up, brother?
Hey, Richie, how you doing, man?
Not too bad.
The man, the myth, the legend. Wow.
Indeed. There's not too many people that are speaking these days with the actual 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗲 in the background. So a lot of people don't believe that's true.
Yeah, you know, if I had time, I'm in my home office right now. So if I had time, I would have gone to my other office that has the skulls behind me. So sorry.
No big deal. Let me ask you. I've listened to your show for years now. I've listened to all the videos that you put out on the many different forums that you have available, Facebook, YouTube, your website. How did you end up down this particularly ever-increasing rabbit hole? How did you end up in this genre? I mean, this is we live in we're labeled conspiracy theorists, you know. You could possibly come up with, you pretty much tagged yourself with everything and you're leading the pack. So how did you find yourself here?
Wow, man. Not by choice. I suppose you could say by choice, but I think I was guided down this path, to be honest with you. You know, growing up, I've always, and what kid's not interested in giants and monsters and, you know, hybrid creatures and stuff, right? I mean, we grow up with, you know, Clash of the Titans and Star Wars and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I've always been interested in the weird, the paranormal. I actually had quite a number of very unfortunate experiences with shadow people growing up. And so, you know, all those things intrigued me, scared me, you know, and were of quite a bit of interest to me. Also been a believer in Jesus Christ. When I knew him as Jesus Christ, I now refer to him as Yeshua, but grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a Baptist minister when I was a kid, so I've been in the church my whole life. Accepted Christ as my Savior at age 7, but I used to have a big problem with the Old Testament, and you know, we pride ourselves a lot of times in being New Testament Bible believing Christians, right? And we would go to the Old Testament every now and then for those cool Sunday school stories. Hey, let's talk about David and Goliath, or hey, let's talk about Noah and the flood. You know, let's talk about Abraham. Okay, cool. But I used to have those 1-year Bible plans. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen those, but you know, read the whole Bible through in a year. And I couldn't get very far without getting totally tweaked out, because you go into the Torah, you know, the first 5 books of the Bible, and you're not very far into it, and you start seeing God saying stuff like, hey, kill the women, kill the children, wipe out everything, you know. It wouldn't compute in my head, man. I'm like, here you got Yeshua over here telling Philip, hey, if you've seen me, you've seen my Father. And here's this loving guy, you know, he's not judged. The only people he has problems with are the religious people, right? I mean, he's hanging out with publicans and sinners, and he's loving people, he's healing people. This amazing, awesome, loving guy. And there's Dad over here, kill everybody, kill everything.
Right. And a lot of people try to hang that hat still to this day without actually looking at what lied in the background. So I hear you.
Yeah, and it is a deterrent for a lot of people. I mean, many people become atheists because they, you know, we don't want to have anything to do with this quote unquote God of the Old Testament. And yet Yeshua consistently says, hey, if you see me, you've seen him. And the New Testament says that Yeshua is the expressed image of the Father. And I'm going, man, how do you reconcile that? You know, and one day in the course of studying the subject of giants and Nephilim and stuff like that, I come across this supernatural super package deal that Tom Horn had put out. And it had, like, I don't remember, 3 or 4 books and a bunch of CD audio box sets and some DVDs. It was like the super set for, like, I don't know, $85 or $100, whatever it was. And I was like, wow, this is the mother load, you know? So I bought it. And as I started listening to the CD box sets, Steve Quayle made a statement. He said, the understanding of Genesis 6 is literally the Rosetta Stone for understanding all of Scripture and history. Now, that's basically a paraphrase, but he said something to that effect. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty grandiose statement to make, you know? But then I quickly began to see that he was right. Because when you truly do understand what's going on in Genesis 6, all of a sudden the Old Testament starts to make perfect sense, and you're able to finally, at least I was able to finally reconcile the Yeshua and the Father are the same, you know, and he's not this crazy genocidal, you know, schizophrenic, prejudiced maniac.
Right, right.
You know, and that opened up a world to me that I didn't even know existed. It opened up a new phase of spiritual growth for myself, because now I wasn't blocked with the Bible. I mean, it's pretty tough to be a Christian and claim your Bible as your source for truth, but every time you open it up, it's tweaking you out and you can't get it, you know?
Right, right. People just can't wrap their heads around the supernatural part of it. They write it off, and it deters them.
Yeah, exactly. And so when that opened it up for me, I'm a very passionate person when it comes to, if I believe something, you're going to hear about it.
Right.
You know, I don't have the ability to just keep it to myself. It's got to come out, you know. And it wasn't too long after listening to those box sets and stuff like that, that I actually, it's all right around the same time frame. I got this idea for writing what I thought was going to be a movie script, but eventually turned into a TV series called Seed.
Seed. I remember that. I was dying for that to come out. I remember that, man.
Yeah, that was, well, I started working on it, I want to say maybe late 2008, 2009, somewhere in that time frame, and had the makings of a rough draft in 2009. And then at the end of the year, and it's an interesting story, man. You call yourself Richie from Boston, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in Chicopee, Massachusetts. I lived there for 33 years of my life, but went through a crucible in 2002. From actually 2000 to 2002 was a rough time for me. In 1998, there was all these intellectual properties coming out because the millennium was coming, you know, Y2K.
Right. Yep. Everything's going to crash.
Everything's going to crash. Or there was a lot of people capitalizing on logos and graphics and various intellectual properties related to the millennium. And this one guy had actually had the brilliance to trademark the date, January 1, 2000. He trademarked the date. You know, we normally write like 01/01/00, right? When we write a date out. Well, he's sitting on an airplane. He's looking at the date, reading some articles on Y2K. And he says, I wonder if I just took the slashes and turned them into dashes. So he trademarked 01-01-00. And the dude had made like $300 million by, I believe it was September of 1998, in licensing the right to use that logo on baseball hats and frisbees and whatever.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm going, wow. You know, I mean, as an entrepreneur and a businessman, I'm thinking that is absolutely brilliant. As an artist, I'm going, what a piece of crap. I mean, on January 2nd, it's over, but who cares? You know, January 2nd, what does that guy care if it's over? The guy's made over $300 million, you know? So I thought, I can compete with that. So I created a logo that I eventually trademarked as the symbol of a new generation. And it was a 2K symbol that looked very much like a fraternity symbol. If you could imagine the Roman numeral 2, and like if you think of times Roman K, but remove the vertical post. So all you have is a little wedge on the side. So you have a Roman numeral 2 with a little wedge on the side for the K. So it looked cool. And my thinking was, I'm Generation X, right? I assume you probably are too.
I am.
So what's the next generation? Well, at that time, they were calling the next generation Generation Y. Well, generations aren't labeled for the alphabet. we were called, I mean, you had the greatest generation, you know, World War I or II. You had the baby boomers, you know, and then you had Generation X. So the reason they called us Generation X is because we were the 13th American generation. We were right in the middle of, you know, Vietnam and, you know, Kent State shootings and, you know, JFK, all this crazy stuff happening in the 60s. And they basically thought, what hope does this generation have? You know, we were like the nothing generation.
Right.
So we X, like whatever, you know, but by the 80s, the X had become a brand. You had X Games and X this and X Men and, you know, X everything, you know. marketed toward. It's like we were the first generation to be labeled and marketed, you know. And so I thought, well, I could carry that forward into the next generation. So, you know, I put this whole campaign together. I raised like something like $80,000 in a very short period of time.
Wow.
I created a corporation and had investors, and every time I put my stuff, I had a Korean manufacturer that came on board that wanted to be my official manufacturer. They said, "Forget licensing, man. You've got the next Nike here," you know. And, you know, next thing you know, I'm doing trade shows at the �奧𝗵𝗿𝗱 Center in New York City. My booth is right between the World Wrestling Federation and Paramount Theaters, right? Or Paramount Pictures. Like literally, yeah, Paramount and World Wrestling Federation, and then Rob Skiba right in the middle with 2K, you know.
Wow.
And I went down this crazy, fast-paced journey that was looking like this is headed for the stars, man. I was working on a $30 million contract with Will Smith, who had just put out an album, Will 2K, the 𝗲𝗚𝗍𝗔. And I was pitching him to use my logo for his concert tours and stuff like that. And things were going great. Then a buddy of mine that I grew up with, and we joined the Army together, he saw what was happening with my 2K project. And he's like, well, I should come up with something. So he took the stars in the American flag, you know, the 50 stars, and he rearranged the star field so it had like a ring of stars and kind of like a starburst pattern, and put the number 2000 in the middle as in a colonial style font. And he showed it to me. He's like, "What do you think of this?" I'm like, "Dude, that's awesome. That is beautiful." It's like the bicentennial flags, if you remember, in 1770.
I do.
1976. Well, he kind of took that idea and turned it into a millennium flag. And I said, okay, you know, he asked if I would be the project manager on it. I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. You know, learning from what I did from the previous project. So we trademarked that as the official patriotic millennium flag. And same thing, man, people were throwing money at us and we're doing trade shows, and, you know, wow, this is amazing. And Tom Hanks, my mother found an article in Reader's Digest that showed Tom Hanks, and he had just done Saving Private Ryan. And HBO was about to put out the Band of Brothers miniseries.
I remember that.
And he basically had a sales pitch saying, hey, you know what? There is no memorial in Washington, D.C. for World War II, if you could believe that. I mean, you had like the Marines memorial, but there wasn't like an official memorial for World War II. So he's like, hey, you know, let's make this happen. And Senator Bob Dole came on board as sort of a congressional spokesperson for the deal. And they needed to raise $100 million. They had 80, but they stalled out. They needed 20 more, and they just couldn't get any further. And I turned to my buddy. I'm like, dude, we've got the perfect fundraiser here. I mean, we sold 400 flags in Chicopee, Massachusetts by just waving it on the roof of my video production office on the corner of James Street and Memorial Drive. If you remember, there was a strip mall plaza there. And I had a video production office there. And we just put the flag on the roof, and people driving by, going around the rotary there on Memorial Drive, saw it, and I'm like, wow, what is that? It came in 400 flags, just flying it on the roof. I said, dude, if we could sell, I'm like, if we could sell 400 flags in Chicopee, Massachusetts without advertising, if this goes national, it's going to be huge. So I put together a 26-page proposal, got on a plane, didn't know anything, didn't know anybody, just went out to LA. I'm like, I got to find Tom Hanks. And I don't even drink coffee, but I know that's where you meet people. So it wasn't a Starbucks, but it was a coffee-like place like Starbucks on Sunset Boulevard. And I'm just networking. I'm just talking with people. And somebody overheard me saying that I was trying to get a hold of Tom Hanks. He goes, "You're trying to get to Tom Hanks?" I said, "Yeah." He says, well, he goes to my church. He's Greek Orthodox. And he says, he's like best friends with the priest. And, you know, come with me to church this weekend, and I'll introduce you to the priest. I said, okay. So I went to church with this guy. Afterwards was introduced to the priest, showed him my package, what I was trying to do. He says, wow, this is exactly what Tom's been looking for. But he was shooting Castaway at the time, so he wasn't even in town. So they said, tell you what, can I take this package? I said, yeah. So I think he gave it to Rita Wilson, his wife, who took it to Playtone, his production company. And the next day I get a phone call from an attorney in Washington, D.C. saying, hey, FedEx a copy of this to me like right away. So it's like, here I go from the East Coast to West Coast just to mail it back to the East Coast, but whatever, okay. So I send it. Long story short, I put Will Smith was a $30 million contract. I put him on hold. I was working with James Lasseter and something Herndon. Sherwood Herndon was the connection I had in New York that hooked me up with James Lasseter, who was Will Smith's manager. So I kind of put all that on hold because the Tom Hanks project was looking to be a $70 million contract.
Wow.
So we were going to sell 2 million flags, $35 a piece, $70 million, 20 million goes to the memorial. The rest is left to split between Tom Hanks, the attorneys, me, and my buddy. You know, and this was like a done deal, man. I mean, it was like the perfect everything. And I had a sales pitch. It was basically, hey, the price of freedom has been paid. It's time we say thank you. Here's an official patriotic millennium flag. A percentage of the proceeds goes towards building the World War II memorial. It was a perfect storm, man. Then, and I put all my eggs in that basket, dude. I mean, like everything went on hold for that. And basically, some rich guy in the country somewhere put something, I think it was like $14 million into this deal. And I saw this news report. Bob Dole got on TV saying, hey, Congress, let's get the other 6 and get this over with, you know. And I turned to my now ex-wife and said, we just filed for bankruptcy. And yeah, it was this explosion from hell where lost my business, lost my house. My wife takes off with some other guy. And oh my God, I basically ended up broke, homeless, divorced, bankrupt, and living in a Dodge Stratus with everything I owned in it, ready to put a bullet in my head.
The American dream.
Yeah, that's 2002. And my uncle who lived down here said, hey man, there's this, it was a scripture-based self-help program kind of thing that helped him when he was going through the same thing. And he told my mom, whatever it takes, Rob's got to go to this thing, because I was a mess, man. So it was a 3-weekend deal. He flew me from Massachusetts down to Texas for the first 2. And by December 18th of 2002, I was living in a tar pit, man. I mean, it was killing me living there in Massachusetts. So, and, you know, my ex-wife, her boyfriend set up a new business for her right across the street from my parents' house. Because when I lost my house, I moved in with my parents, and then every morning I'd wake up and, you know, I'm like, how long do the wicked prosper, Lord? Kind of thing. As I'm looking at her, you know, new business right there in front of my parents' house. It was killing me. So got in the car, went to Texas with the intention of going to part 3. Had no idea what I was going to do from there. My intention actually was to finish the program and then go to California and go make movies. I'm figuring I'm already halfway to the true Hollywood story, right? You know, I'm living in a van down by the river, you know.
Right.
Living in a Dodge Stratus with everything on it. But every time I tried to leave the Metroplex, it was like I hit a force field, man. It was like I knew God was withholding. He was not letting me leave the Metroplex. And finally just threw my arms up and said, okay, fine. What do you want? You know? And, you know, he set me up with, I finally got a, you know, freelance job, got an apartment and different things. And 2003 was probably the most difficult year of my life. At the same time, it was the best year of my life. Wouldn't want to repeat it, but am forever grateful for it.
Right. And I know exactly what you're saying.
In that season, God put this seriously broken man back together again, and I was applying for jobs that had my picture on the job description. We want Rob Skiba. I show up and they're like, "Oh, you're overqualified," and I couldn't get hired to save my life. I mean, the only job I had was a freelance job that worked long enough for me to get an apartment. And then the guy who hired me, his son graduated from college, so he gave my job to him. And I was like, "Oh, great!" Awesome. So here I got a new apartment, and my car broke down, so I ended up getting a new used car, and then I lost my freelance job and had no way to pay for any of it. And I'm like, will this never end? You know,
it just keeps coming.
It just keeps coming. And I was applying for jobs left and right, and nothing was working. And so finally I said, God, I know it's not because I'm not trying. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to get hired. You're stopping me. You stopped me from leaving this state, and you're stopping me from getting a job. I'm like, and I said, you're going to have to provide for me, man. And he said, well, then you're going to have to spend time with me. I said, deal. And 2003 from March to December was basically consists of me crying a lot, praying a lot, and reading my Bible. And that's about it in my apartment. But what a season that was. And in August of 2003, I laid my dream down of all I ever wanted to do is make movies and TV shows and stuff like that. It was like, since I saw Star Wars at age 7, that was it. That was what I wanted to do. And in August, I said, I don't care anymore. I've chased this my whole life. It's yours. I'll do whatever you want me to do. That was August of 2003. January of 2004, I got hired as an international missions multimedia director for an international missions organization, and ended up traveling the world. Went to about a dozen countries, making mini movies about what missionaries are doing. I'd get entrenched with the missionaries, do what they do, document it, and then come back, make videos that would create awareness for what they're doing to help them raise support. And, you know, I did that from January of 2004 until toward the end of 2009. I got a tap on the shoulder, and I felt like the Lord was saying, hey, remember that dream you laid down in 2003? Yeah. You want it back? No. He's like, why not? I said, because it hurt too much, man. He said, that's because you did it your way. What if we did it my way? I said, what does that mean? He said, what do you think we've been doing for the last 6 years? You know, when I would go into the foreign mission field, in the corporate world, when I did corporate video, we would interview the guy that wants the video. He would tell me what they want. We would script it out. We would storyboard it. We would shoot it with intent, have it edited within a day or two, you know, or you know, maybe 3 tops. Within a week, the whole project would be done, basically. In the mission field, it wasn't like that. They'd say, hey, we need a video for Albania. Okay, cool. What's it about? I don't know. Get on a plane. What? You know, so I go there and I just shoot everything, you know. But it was like, I would be like, okay, Lord, I have no idea what I'm doing here. Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to get accomplished. You be the writer, director, producer. I'll be your camera guy. You just tell me what to shoot. And it was like crazy stuff. I mean, I'd be driving down the road and he'd be like, hey, look at that. Wow, this amazing shot, you know, to be the opening for the video later. But I would come back with 40 hours of raw footage that I would have to edit down to 7 relevant minutes, because that's all a missionary typically has time to show in a typical church. You know, you've seen the missionary come to your church and, you know, do his little flannel board or whatever, you know, overhead projector presentation is always pretty cheesy. So my job was to take that to the next level, and I joked about it. But basically, my commission was to make people cry and give money for the missionaries. You know, so I'd have to take those 40 hours and then find the story out of that, condense it to 7 minutes, put music to it that would make people cry, and, you know, the whole deal. So I learned a lot in that process. And so when he said, "What if we did it my way?" I began to understand. I was like, "Okay, that's cool." And I asked for confirmation, because he was telling me to leave my job, which was a good paying full-time job with benefits. I met my wife, my current wife, in the ministry. She was in the communications department with me. And I was very secure and very happy. And he's saying, step out in faith to an abyss of nothing but ideas scribbled on napkins for some TV show that I had in my head, you know. I'm like, Lord, you know, I don't know, man. You know, it was one thing being broke and going through that crucible in 2003 when I was alone in a 700 square foot apartment. But now I'm married and have an adopted son, and it's a different situation here. And he's like, look, do you trust me or not? I'm like, yeah, but man. And so he, through divine providence, sent me to the desert of Arizona in December of 2009, where I ended up spending 5 days alone with God out there in that desert. That was very much like a Moses, Abraham type experience. Wow. where he did incredible things. And my typical writing pace when I'm doing creative writing, you know, fictional writing, is about 3 to 5 pages a day. When I came back from that trip, I wrote 17 pages and a half a day and outlined 72 episodes for a 6-season TV series. Wow. That wasn't me. You know what I mean? That was direct downloads, you know, like Matrix. And that's when I got real intentional. You know, it's a big, long story, but I'm just, you asked me my journey. So this is the journey. Cool. It's cool. This is the journey that led me into, it's like all those years before, I had, as a hobby, been researching the 𝗵𝗿𝗍𝗶, the giants, hybrids, you know, transhumanism, shadow people, pyramids, you name it, as a hobby. But when I got in this download for the script for the series for Seed, I got real intentional about doing the research. And so I'm like, man, you know, I got questions. You know, I want to talk to Steve Quayle and Tom Horn and 𝗍𝗍𝗶. I want to talk to these guys. Well, they're busy guys. I am now in the position that they were in when I was thinking about wanting, people try to contact me all the time. I'm a hard person to get a hold of because I'm a very busy guy, right. You know? And now I understand why these guys weren't returning my phone calls and why my emails never were answered. Well, I get it now, you know? So then I thought, well, because I listened to them on radio shows all the time, and George Norrie and all these shows that these guys are on. I thought, well, why don't I create a radio show, and then I could contact whoever their gatekeepers are and say, hey, listen, I have a radio show. I'd like to talk about your latest book, 𝗲𝗱𝗍𝗂, or whatever. If you're interested, contact me. And well, I mean, what author is not interested in promoting his book or DVD, right? All of a sudden, now these guys are calling me, and I created my radio show. This is the truth. I created my radio show just so that I could talk to these guys for 2 hours and pick their brain, while promoting their book. And if you listen to my early shows, I listen to them now and I'm like, dude, shut up! Because I was just like doing all the talking. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I'm like yelling at myself now, shut up! Let the guest talk, But that led to me, I ended up sharing the stage with these guys. I mean, I ended up somehow very quickly on the public speaking circuit doing huge, conferences and thousands of people and stuff. But something happened a few years ago. Some of my research, these other guys in the in crowd, I call it now, won't touch. And for better or worse, like I said, if I'm passionate about something, I can't shut up about it. And
Right.
I don't care if it's controversial. If it's something that I just want to know what the truth is, period. And that's a blanket statement. I want to know what the truth is.
Exactly.
So when I find what I think is the truth, I'm passionate about talking about it. And I found out very quickly that some things are very, let's say, not profitable from a business standpoint to talk about. And some of these guys, I don't want to say that they're all about the money. I'm not trying to insinuate that. However, I know that there are topics that they're not touching simply because they know that it can really hurt their business. And I'm a perfect example of it. There have been several times where I would get to a point where my book and DVD sales and my books came as a result of blogging. I blogged for 2011. Like if I woke up in the morning and had an idea or something, I just wrote about it. And by the end of 2011, I looked at my blogs and I thought, I wonder how much I wrote. So I pulled my blog format down into some print software and saw they had over 1,000 pages worth of content there. And I'm like, holy cow, I should make some books out of this. So my first book was Babylon Rising, and published in January, February 2012. And the first chapter of the first book was called The Genesis 6 Experiment. After I published that book, I realized I got to really unpack that first chapter. It was the shortest chapter in the book. So my second book was Archon Invasion, The Rise, Fall, and Return of the Nephilim, which became about a 366-page elaboration on chapter 1 of the first book. And as a result of that, I realized from taking cues from these other guys that, people like books, but they really like DVDs. And so if I could make DVDs from the conferences that I was doing that would complement the book, then, I could make a pretty decent living doing that. And it took, oh boy, it took a number of years, man. We were running lean and living from miracle to miracle from 2010 till probably 2014 or 15, so a good 4 or 5 years there. I was back in a 2003 mode where God's paying my bills, just miraculously crazy things happening, But by about 2015, Amazon's starting to bring in some pretty good monthly checks. Conferences are becoming more and more, prevalent and making money at conferences. And so now I'm actually earning a living that was somewhat comparable to what I had before through book and DVD sales.
Right.
But then, it was right around that time from 2013, 𝗏𝗏𝗱 contacted me after we did a debate. We debated each other on the issue of multiple incursions of Nephilim and how they returned after the flood. We did a debate and it went really well. He enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. He contacted me after that conference and said, what do you think about starting a show based on the fact that we disagree on non-essential issues? We agree on the core essentials of our faith. Yeshua is the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through him. Gift of grace, not of works, all that. We agree on the core essentials. Well, let's talk about the other stuff. Let's debate it. So we created a show called Quest for Truth. And that was awesome. But in that season, I began to come off of a page that I was on for my whole life, for the most part, and that is the Preacher of Rapture. I used to be a hardcore dispensationalist, pre-trib rapture guy, hardcore.
I remember.
And when I came off that page, I got kicked to the curb hard. Oh, man. I mean, when I was in with the prophecy and the news crowd, we had some of the, and 𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗱 was the project manager, sales guy, whatever, for prophecy and the news. He was like, man, we sold $40,000 worth of my first DVD in like a month.
Wow.
Like, it just was flying out. People loved it. He's like, dude, it seemed like we were reordering. And at that time, we didn't have any money. My wife and I were flat broke, and he's sending us orders for like 1,000 DVDs, and I didn't have the money to go produce them. You know, I'm like, and they weren't paying. There was like pay 30 days out or whatever. I'm like, oh man. So, I mean, here's Sheila and I burning, you know, we get the, you know, these deals at the Fry's Electronics or whatever, right? You know, get some discs. We're burning them, you know, one-offs on our computer and putting stick-on labels on them. And like, we got a shrink wrap machine thing, and we had a little assembly line in our little 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom apartment. And, you know, as soon as the disc comes out, we're putting a label on it, we're shrink wrapping it, and Sheila and I are doing this little assembly line until we got to the point where they were finally paying us, and then I could go out and get them professionally produced. But I mean, it was like, woohoo! we finally arrived! Yay! I come out with pre-trib rapture. All of a sudden, they scrubbed all evidence that I ever existed in the prophecy and the news. I had, you know, full-page spread in their magazine. Gone. I had videos on YouTube, on their YouTube channel, that were in some cases exceeding Tom Horn videos and views. Pulled. Not getting invites to conferences anymore, and we were back in the dirt again.
Well, I've been exposed to enough of the quote-unquote in crowd to know exactly what you're saying, and the truth is the truth. But you've just gone overboard, and I can see why you were scrubbed.
Oh yeah, and you know, there are other things. Like in my first book, I had written a chapter talking about Christmas and Easter having nothing to do with our Savior, and that they're totally pagan, and you know, all that. Well, I mean, for some of these, most of these ministries, Christmas is big bucks, man.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Like, that's the, you know, get your Christmas special package deal, blah blah blah. You know, all of the pitches come out and everything. And I came out with like the 10 reasons why Satan loves Christmas, you know, in my book. So I mean, I was getting it. I just, you know, and 9/11's an inside job, and you know, a lot of stuff that people weren't gonna touch publicly. Even though you could talk to some of these guys privately and they would be on the same page, but they know it's career suicide to talk about some of these things, or to use another translation besides the King James Bible, God forbid, in your book, you know. And I was like, hey, you know, this is a more accurate rendering, so I'm going to use this translation. And, you know, you just read the Hebrew or the Greek for yourself. You can see it's a more accurate translation.
Right.
The King James translators, I love them. They're great. They're wonderful, but they're not perfect.
Right.
You know? And, you know, they say it's the only, and I grew up King James only. It's all I've ever heard. But they would tell us it's a literal word for word perfect translation. How can you say that when they replace the name of God over 6,000 times with the generic title? The Hebrew is 𝗲𝗄𝗱𝗄, and they replaced it with the Lord.
Right.
Over 6,000 times. So that, just by that alone, I'm going to stand in the face of a King James only guy and say it is not a literal word for word translation. And anybody with half a brain and the ability to read can figure that out for themselves. Look, I love the King James Bible, but don't give me that perfect, it's, you know, literal word for word. So, and these are the kinds of things that were constantly getting me in trouble, you know. And so 𝗏𝗵𝗿𝗄 and I did, as we're going through the book of Revelation, we get to, I forget, I think it was chapter 4 maybe. And that's one of those chapters where John is pulled up, right? And so some people who believe in the pre-trib rapture will use that as a type and shadow. See, you know, there's no mention of the church after chapter 4, and John is caught up, so he's a metaphor figure, you know, for the church going up. I'm like, no, that's not what it says. And so episode 17, both 𝗏𝗵𝗿𝗄 and I were bantering back and forth on this, and I was coming out pretty hardcore going, this isn't what the scriptures are saying to us, you know, what most pre-tribbers wanted to say. And then on episode 18, I said, okay, Doug, I came out pretty hardcore in the last episode. Point blank, where are you on the pre-trib rapture? Now, based on our discussions, And he said, and I knew he was really weighing the cost in his head, because he kind of took that deep breath and said, I got to say, I don't believe it's biblically supported. Boom, kick to the curb.
Oh.
He had like, if I had like a half a page or a page spread in their magazine, he had like 5 pages. I mean,
Right.
at one point, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 said that Doug should be buying his own island by now, because his products are doing well. Kick to the curb, man. Pow! That's when I knew, okay, it wasn't just me. It's hot button topics. And, I'm in your face. I'm pretty brash, kind of rah. Doug is very pastoral, very laid back, like the sweetest, nicest guy. And yet he got the exact same treatment I got,
Ouch.
And then at that point, you reach a certain level when you're like, okay, screw it. What more can they do to me? So if a subject came up, I didn't care how controversial it was. If it caught my attention and I got passionate about it, what do I got to lose? I'm already on the blacklist for everybody. So, and it kind of got comical, because another guy came out with something, he got blacklisted. And so I just, as a knee-jerk reaction, I went out and bought the domain name. I bought the URL, blacklistedheretics.com. I haven't done anything with it, but my thought was, I'll just become the catch-all for everybody get kicked to the curb, and maybe the heretics can band together over here and start our own thing someday. That hasn't happened yet, but that was my thinking.
Oh, it's coming soon.
Yeah, well, it does seem to be that way. And then you mentioned flat Earth, and holy cow, you want to talk about a firestorm? That one. It was April 2015. I'm going to do my taxes, and my accountant's in a town that's like about an hour and a half away. So I a lot of times when I got a long drive like that, and everything in Texas is a long drive, so I would download a podcast or something to listen to, and I like 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏.
Canary Cry Radio.
Yeah, I like those guys. I've met them a few times at conferences and whatnot. And, they're fun, loving, kind of goofy guys, but they talk about some really heavy stuff,
Yeah.
And so they had this show that they just uploaded. It was Mark Sargent and Flat Earth Clues, and I'm thinking this has got to be like a April Fool's joke or something. Right. So I thought this should be good, right? So I put it in. And, in the beginning of it, I'm rolling my eyes going, this guy's on crack. I mean, this is stupid, but by the time the show ended and I'm pulling into my accountant's driveway there, I'm going, shoot, some of that made a little bit of sense, and I'm going, what the heck? I'm like, I couldn't even focus when I'm with my attorney doing my accountant doing my taxes. I'm like, what the heck, because I'd already done a ton of research on 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 for other stuff, Inner Earth and all kinds of stuff like that. And when Mark Sargent's talking about 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's stuff, I'm going, I gotta look into this, So I listened to the same podcast for the hour and a half drive back home, and that was, I think it was the 13th. I believe it was a Monday. And so I go online and I watch all Mark Sargent's, I think he had 10 or 11 Flat Earth Clues videos. And at the end of each video, he put like his email address and phone number and stuff. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to contact this guy. So I'm like, hey, man, I introduced myself. I said, I heard a show. I said, I had a radio show. Would you come on my show? Yeah, so I listened to it on Monday. I watched some more stuff on Tuesday. I had him on my show on Wednesday. And if you listen to that first broadcast, I'm like, okay, dude, I am very much entrenched and heavily invested in the Neil Adams expanding Earth theory, globular Earth theory.
Right.
In fact, I just did a conference in December of 2014 about that very thing. And it was the Yahuwah Triangle, Part 1, dealt primarily with the Neil Adams expanding Earth theory and how it related, in my mind, to the Great Pyramid of Giza and blah, blah, blah. So that's December of 2014. April 2015, all of a sudden my world's turning upside down and getting flattened.
Yep, I remember.
So if you listen to that podcast, I'm like, okay, dude, I really believe this, but tell me more. And I don't remember if it was on the air or afterwards, but he at some point challenged me. He says, okay, Rob, I get it. You really believe in the spinning globular Earth model. Prove it without using NASA, the government, or the military of any country. I thought, okay, that should be easy. Well, I didn't do that. First thing I thought of was we've all seen the pictures. I mean, you know, I had a wallpaper, one of those, the entire wall was a moonscape with the Earth there. I mean, I looked at that like every day in my bedroom, you know, for years. But then when I started to look into that and went on JPL lab, you know, Jet Propulsion Laboratories website, and I see this spinning 25-hour stop. It was a time-lapse animation of the Earth in 25-hour rotation, and none of the clouds are moving. This is from a 1990 Galileo space probe. Now, I'm going, wait a minute. I mean, I could take my camera outside right now, point it up at the sky for an hour, and then put it in the computer and speed it up, and you're going to see the clouds doing all kinds of crazies.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All kinds of stuff. I'm like, if for 25 hours the clouds didn't move, really? And that just, what? And so then I start looking at what they call the blue marbles pictures, and I keep finding, even they would even admit it, this is a composite. I'm like, why does it need to be a composite? You know, if they got satellites out there, why isn't it a Polaroid? Why is it a composite?
Now, bear in mind, you're talking to somebody for the first time at 9 years. I'm 49 years old. At 9 years old, I saw Saturn through a telescope for the first time.
Sure.
I was a NASA fanboy forever until I started seeing the CGI, the artist conception, and the never-ending lies. So with that, I digress.
Yeah, I said that I wanted to be a filmmaker after I saw Star Wars. I saw Star Wars when I was 7. By the time I was 8, I don't know how many times I'd seen the movie. I mean, it was like every weekend I was going to see the movie.
I remember I was 10.
Yeah. I know I saw it at least 13 times in the theater because my grandfather had retired that year, and I'm the only boy. Like I had one sister and all female cousins. So, you know, my grandfather retired. He's like, hey, what do you want to do today, Robbie? I'm like, I want to see Star Wars. So his grandpa's like, you know, and I got another buddy with me where, you know,
nice.
Red 5 going in, you know. And so by the time I was 8, I made a public declaration. I said I will either be an astronaut, a filmmaker, or a movie star by the time I'm 30, or I'll be dead. And, you know, at 8 years old, 30 is like, you know,
a million years away.
That's a million years away. So it was a lofty goal, but I thought, and I wasn't suicidal. My thinking was, if I hadn't achieved one of those goals by the time I was 30, it would have to be because I was dead. That's how determined I was.
Right.
You know? So my first one was NASA, man. I mean, like you, I had a 150 power telescope that I was glued to every night, you know, out there looking at it. And then I got a 300 power telescope later that had the, you know, gears and everything, and it had filters. You can look at the sun, all kind. I mean, I was glued to that thing. Going to this planetarium in Springfield, and I
know right what you're talking about.
Yeah,
and,
you know, the
and
Springfield Planetarium.
Just for people that don't know about telescopes, just using one is a ton of work and dedication. Just FYI.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, you know, the reflector telescope was a lot easier, but the refractor, man, it was hard, man, because, I mean, you look at this little eyepiece, and man, it was hard to really get it. And of course, everything's moving, so, you know. But when I went to the Springfield Planetarium several times, I would ask the guy, I'm like, can you point it at the moon and show me the lunar lander? Like, you know, it was an innocent question. And
no big deal.
Nobody would do it. I went to several different planets, not just the Springfield one. There's several others that, you know, I was privileged to go to in my youth.
That's the only good thing about Massachusetts, I'd have to say, is we've got a lot of decent museums and astrological viewing places. So
yeah, for sure.
That don't know.
But nobody would do that. And, you know, they would always say, well, you can't, and it's too small. And, you know, I'm like, I'm looking at the moons of Jupiter. Why can't I see the lunar lander? You know, or at least the reflection off of it. I mean, it's all tinfoil, right? I mean, you know, so at an early age, I'm questioning this stuff, but my goal was to be an astronaut, man. That's why I joined the Army. A week out of high school, I'm in boot camp, you know, and, you know, I joined the Army because I wanted to fly helicopters. And two reasons. One was my dad was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam and was a career guy, got out after 30 years flying helicopters. So I wanted to follow my dad's footsteps. But two, I had read somewhere that part of the training the Apollo astronauts had to learn how to fly helicopters in order to learn how to fly the lunar lander. So I'm like, great, I'm going to learn how to fly helicopters. And then once I'm proficient in that, I'll transition out of the Army into the Air Force, fly jets, and then put my application in before I'm 28, because that was sort of the cutoff, something that I'd read. So I had a plan and I was working it, man. And but I had a problem. When you're a pilot, every year you have to take what they call a Class 1 flight physical, and that's a head to toe. They check everything out, you know. And whenever I would do my EKG, the little bump before the big bump in your EKG, it's the P wave. Mine didn't come up as high as it's supposed to, and so it would always get red flagged. And they would say, "Okay, well, we gotta check this out." So they would hook me up to the $6 million man machine, you know, and try to kill you. You know? And that's the only way I got through that. I mean, when they go through the stress test, I mean, they're really working you. They're trying to kill you. And but I would just imagine Lee Majors, you know, in that opening sequence. Yep,
I remember. Most people are right now have no idea, but I remember, brother.
You know, in my head, I'm going. But what would happen, man, is the more they stress my heart out, the more my heart approached normal. So I would always get this, kind of funny. They would always give me a waiver and they labeled it a normal abnormality. It's abnormal for the textbooks, but apparently it's normal for me. So I would get a waiver, but I would get school dates and everything for the next step that I needed to go through. I would get school 4 times. I got accepted for school, and it was either government cutbacks or something crazy with the physical that bumped me and somebody else took my slot or whatever. The last one was I was taking martial arts at the time, and I was doing some sparring, and a dude clipped my knee, and I couldn't squat like a duck for the physical because my knee was swollen. And, you know, so basically I was like, okay, you know, it's not meant to be, apparently. So I got out of the Army, and I was out for 5 years. And then I thought, well, I got 1 more year to make a go at this before I'm 28. So after 5 years of being out, I went back in for 1 year, and I'm going to try. I got to know for a fact, you know. So I went in, and this time I went to an Air Force doctor that did my physical, and all that time, you know, between just what you get with Army PT and, you know, working out, and I had been bodybuilding at that time and was doing really well. My pectoral muscles were quite developed back then. And when I did my Air Force Class 1 physical, the nurse comes in looking at my EKG, and she's looking at me, and I'm like, yeah, I know, P wave, right? She goes, how do you know? I said, I've been through this a few times. She's looking at the probes, and you got probes all over you. And the one that was like right here, she just moved over like a ½ inch, retested, and it was perfectly normal.
Unbelievable.
So it was like all that time, I was totally normal. And when they were doing the stress test, it was probably just a sweat moving it over to, you know, read my heart better.
Unbelievable.
But whatever was going on with my pectoral muscle, it was interfering with the reading. So, but what that told me was God was saying, you know what, you're all right, kid. You're healthy. You're normal. This is just not my plan for you. So I thought, okay. So I put dude, I mean, I had, up until very recently, I had right above my monitor, I had a signed autographed picture by Jim Irwin, allegedly of him standing on the moon, that said, aim for your dreams, Rob, you know, go for your dreams, Rob, aim high, Jim Irwin. And that was like my inspiration, you know.
Right.
It was right there, man. I just took it down like 6 months ago. So all that to say, look, you want to talk about a NASA fanboy? I was about as close as you can get to, you know, the Uber fan.
Right. Troll levels fans.
Yeah, right. So I went down hard on this. I didn't want to believe this at all. I didn't even want to continue. But when you start seeing things that don't compute, that don't make sense, and then my buddy that did the flag that I was telling you about, he had already gone down the path of realizing that the moon landing was a fraud long before all of this other stuff. And I was like, you know, that's interesting, Mike. And I look at it but didn't want to believe it. You know, his evidence was extremely compelling, but I didn't want to believe it. But then, I mean, you start watching like 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏's Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, and Astronauts Gone Wild, and, you know, there's a number of other videos out there. And you go to
𝗃𝗍𝗃, I think, 𝗃𝗍𝗃, I think is the website. And you look at the evidence, it is very damning to the Apollo program and to NASA in general. And I mean, you want to talk, you just sit there and you're stunned, man. You're like, you know, I thought waking up to a 9/11 was a big deal.
Right.
Because I'm like Joe Patriot, man, Boy Scout, Army, rah-rah. I was in the honor guard, you know, carried the American flag, you know, and for drill and ceremony and stuff. And you wake up to the 9/11 deal and, you know, the Sandy Hook and all this other stuff. I mean, there's so many of them. And every time you have that moment where you're just kind of sitting there and all you can do is stare at the screen and start drooling on yourself. And the moon landing, and then when I went down this path, I'm going, wow. But I remember what Mark said. He said, try to prove it without using those things. Well, I didn't do that. I was trying to use those things to prove it, but those things weren't proving it. They were proving the exact opposite. And the worst one was the blue marble from, I think it was 2002. That was the default setting. I thought I had my iPad here. You know, when you buy an iPad, it's the default background. You know,
absolutely, it's part of the predictive programming.
It's there, and you know, I've done videos on it. A number of other people have as well. You know, there's lots of them out there now. But you know, I work in Photoshop every day. That's what I do. You know, as a graphic designer and video editor, I live in the Adobe suite. So I saw something about they were supposedly using the clone tool on that image, and I'm like, I'm going to check this out. So I look at it, and holy cow, man! Like there's clone tool evidence of clone tool replication all over that image, and I'm going, what is this?
Right.
You know, and I think it's that same picture that has this peculiar cloud formation. It's like a backward C with a long tail and a little, you know, horizontal cloud formation under the sea, and it's right up around Nova Scotia. It kind of goes around the top of the globe there. And it's once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it, and it stood out in my mind. And I realized, holy cow, this image shows up when they remastered Star Trek, the old series, you know, they updated the special effects. I don't know if you've seen the updated special effects, but
I haven't.
Yeah, they like on Hulu, you could go on Hulu and watch the original Star Trek series with Captain Kirk and all that. The show is still the same, but all the special effects like planets and ships and stuff have been updated. So they got better special effects. Well, I saw 2 episodes of the updated Star Trek that have that exact same Earth with that cloud formation in it. I started seeing it everywhere. Every time I turned on a documentary that showed the Earth. In fact, it was in the introduction to each episode of my Yahuwah Triangle conference. I had my friend Rick Hummer do some intros for me, and it had that Earth in it. I'm going, what is this? And so finally I just said, okay, I'm going to put all that aside. Yeah, I claim the Bible as my source for truth, so I'm going to just read the scriptures. Now, I, like everybody else, have used Isaiah 40:22. The circle of the earth, see, it's a globe. No, that's not what it says. So I start with Genesis, and I didn't get very far. You get to the firmament, and you're done. You're done. It's over. And anybody who wants to tell you the firmament is just an expanse of air, atmosphere, and space, they're sorely deceived. They're deceiving themselves. When you look into the word in Hebrew, and especially in Greek, when the Hebrews took their own Torah and translated it into Greek for the Septuagint, and you look at other references like in the book of Job where it says the sky is hard, it's firm like a strong, it's strong like a, it's firm like a, or it's hard like a metal looking glass, which is a beaten down metal structure like a mirror. Ezekiel says the throne of God is on top of it. I mean, you go through lots of scriptures. And that was the first one that hit me. The firmament does not support the model that I used to promote, which was the 𝗏𝗏𝗃 model of the canopy theory. The Earth is surrounded.
Absolutely. I followed everything 𝗏𝗏𝗃's ever said, and they sprung it on him the minute he walked out of prison.
I know, the poor guy. You know, I love the guy. He radically impacted my life at a young age. He came through our church. He came through town, did a week-long seminar. I had to be in my late teens, early 20s when he came through. Awesome. Awesome. I will always love the guy for what he has done against evolution. But, I mean, here's a guy who's in prison for 9 years. He comes out and everybody's hitting him with flat earth. So you got to know
instantly.
Yeah, instantly. The guy's got to be like, what? What? You know? So I'm like, look, cut the guy some slack, you know? But I'm sorry, his model that I used to parrot myself and teach
I remember.
Doesn't work because it says the sun, moon, and stars were put in the firmament, and it says it multiple times. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's just a King James issue. So I went to every English translation says in, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna look at the Hebrew, and that's what really got me, because I took Hebrew 101 twice, so that gives you an aptitude for my ability to learn Hebrew, but learned enough of the basics anyway that I knew that when the letter bait precedes a word as a prefix, it serves the function of the word in. In fact, it's the first letter in your Bible, in the beginning, Bereshit. And rakia is the word for firmament, but it says berakia. The word rakia is preceded by the letter bait, which means in Hebrew. You cannot make it, you can't force it into saying that it's outside, which the 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 model requires. Right. You have the earth surrounded by a canopy called the firmament in their model, ice canopy, with the sun, moon, and stars outside of it. You can't get that in any English translation. You can't get it from the Hebrew or the Greek. So I'm going, what in the world? And then it got worse when I saw that Isaiah, Yeshua, Peter, and John, 4 massively huge power hitters of Scripture, including the Son of God himself, all said all of the stars are going to fall to earth. And there's no indication that they're using metaphor, which is the knee-jerk reaction. Well, it's metaphor, it's poetic. I'm like, look, if you're going to use a metaphor or poetic language, don't you think it would be helpful to use language that would at least put an image in your mind that's even remotely close to the metaphor you're trying to use?
Right, some sort of indicator that this, I hear exactly what you're saying, and there isn't.
There isn't. There isn't. I mean, he says in Isaiah 40:22, the same passage everybody wants to quote for globes, says he stretches the heavens like a tent to dwell in. Okay, that's a metaphor, like a tent. Well, a tent is stretched out over a flat surface.
Right. Right.
It's not the expanse of air. Nobody would listen to the prophet saying that firmament, the sky, the heavens is like a tent, and automatically go metaphor, figure of speech, idiom for air. Nobody would do that, and so then I was stuck, dude. And for at least a year, if you see my videos, I was calling myself a 𝗏𝗏𝗃 agnostic on this issue. I had to
literally Google that. I literally do because of you. I had to Google that, but
yeah, well, that's what I wanted people to do. And if you did, you saw a 𝗏𝗏𝗃 as somebody that proceeds with inquiry and investigation. Yep. And an agnostic, of course, is somebody who's not yet convinced of the evidence yet. It's got an offense. And so with this particular subject, of course, I'm not an agnostic with regard to the Bible or God or my relationship with Yeshua. But when it came to this issue, and yeah, I see you got on the screen right there, the clone stuff there of the clouds. The reason I call myself a 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 agnostic is because I was about 80% convinced, but there's still at least 20% that was giving me a real hard time that I couldn't reconcile, and I wasn't willing to commit until 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 and I did the test on Lake Michigan, and it was about this time. Yeah, it was June 20. It was my birthday weekend, and my birthday is June 26th, and so during that weekend, I went to Chicago. I went to Lake Michigan, went to Indiana, and we proved, at least to my satisfaction anyway, that Chicago, as viewed from the other side of Lake Michigan, is not a mirage.
No.
And Joshua Nowicki, by now everybody should probably be aware of the picture he took from nearly 60 miles away, which, according to the math on the curvature of the Earth, should be impossible. You should not be able to see it. Now, granted, he was up at about 200 feet altitude on the dunes. I later found this out, and that's going to give him a leg up and an ability to see more of what you would see at ground level, certainly. But still, the weatherman came on the air and he said you would not be able to see Chicago from the other side of Lake Michigan because, the Earth's a globe, right? He actually said you'd have to be much further up, like in space. He actually said this.
Right. I remember, man.
To see it. So he put a graphic on the screen showing a superior mirage. And a superior mirage, well, a mirage inverts something. So in his picture, he showed a sailboat that was lifted up and inverted, and then lifted up again and corrected. That that the mirage was so deep that it had the ability to correct itself from being inverted, like most mirages are, to being vertical, so that you could get the picture that Joshua Nowicki got. And I looked at that and I'm like, what a load of crap. I'm like, that is not a mirage. So I went out to prove it. And the first time I saw that video, when it first came out, I wanted to do the test. And then I just didn't have the money. I mean, it cost me $2,500 of my own money, which I really didn't have to spend, but I was obsessed, man. I'm like, I saved up for it. And as soon as I had the money, and as soon as I was like watching I wanted to do it. It was in the fall and winter of 2015. And when we initially started looking into it, the boat captains were like, what, do you got a suicide? You want to commit suicide? The lake is way too dangerous to go out this time of the year. So he kept pushing it off till finally a window opened up where I had the money and I saw a forecast that looked like it would work. And, praise God, we found the perfect day. In fact, everybody we encountered, including the ship captain the boat that we were on, said this never happens. Like everybody we talked to was freaking out. Like we could see it as soon as we pulled out of the dock. 46 miles away, we pull out of the dock, look across, there's a city. And my hope was that would be what happened, and I could just point the camera at the city and drive toward it the whole time. Because I figured if it's a mirage, then it's magically going to disappear and then roll up over the ball, and we'll see it.
Right.
That's not what happened. It just remained the same, and my camera got bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what, it wasn't a mirage. I was looking at a distant object that got bigger as I got closer to it. And so I put a highlight video on it, and boy, did that open up a can of worms, man. I have probably over 100 videos now on Flat Earth. And what I came to realize is this doesn't matter how much quote unquote proof you have, or whatever it is. You'll have 100 yeah but guys show up that will have a counter argument for it.
Absolutely. I live right.
I don't know what
I live directly across the street from the Atlantic Ocean, and I recently saw a windmill, and according to a topographical map, the windmill is 60 plus miles away. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to get the exact location so I can prove the distance, and then I'm going to get my Nikon out and zoom in on this thing. I've lived here almost 50 years. I've never seen it except one time.
Yeah. I saw one of your videos on chemtrails that you put up recently where you're using your Nikon to see the chemtrail plane. And that camera, man, I mean, as cute as it's got a 83 power optical zoom with a digital zoom that effectively doubles that, the equivalent of about a 2000 millimeter lens. And you can see stuff. I mean, this camera reaches out and touches things, and
it's amazing.
If somebody put a meme out, like an advertisement for the Nikon Coolpix P900, pulling ships back over the curve since 2015, because it does.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt.
And that's the thing. When I came back for a year, when I was doing all the tests and doing everything that I was doing, I cried myself to sleep on a number of occasions, because this deal was, I mean, it's a paradigm shifting, mind bending, like, what the heck deal, and for me, I have built my entire life and ministry by saying my Bible is true. It's my source for truth. You can take it literally, except for where it obviously tells you not to, when it's using parable or allegory or whatever. And here, my Bible, in no uncertain terms, from Genesis to Revelation, if you believe, as I do, that the Bible is Holy Spirit inspired men wrote this thing, then under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, these guys are telling you, you live in a snow globe, and, I put together the website, testingtheglobe.com, put all that scripture reference and everything on there, crying myself to sleep going, God, what is the deal with this? And his only answer to me for a year was, I said what I said.
Oh,
like he wasn't apologizing for it, and but I mean, okay, great. Can you prove it? Can you help me out here? He wouldn't, and he just made me. And after I came back from Lake Michigan, I continued those prayers, but the answer changed. It went from I said what I said to, are you going to believe me now, Rob, or what? And it was like that kind of an attitude I felt in my spirit, And I finally just threw in the towel and said, you know what? Come what may, I'm just going to take a stand, because I can say one thing I know for sure. I have many questions about these other things, even still. One thing I know for sure is that Bible has been my compass in a sea of lies for 47 years. It has never failed me. In some of the most difficult, trying times of my life, it has pulled me through. And you know, the Father who orchestrated that, who authored this book, same thing. And so I said, you know what, Father, let God be true and every man a liar. I'm just going to take a stand and say, I believe what your word says. Two things happen. Three things happen. One, a 1,000,000-ton weight was lifted off my shoulders. I became very light after that. The second thing was I felt the favor of God upon my life like I have never felt it ever. And I've had some significant favor. You've heard some of my testimony. I could spend the entire day talking. But I felt like the only way I can put it is like I felt his smile on me. The third thing that happened was I almost immediately saw a paradigm shift in social media, where in 2015 and 16, there was a lot of resistance because it was new. It was the cognitive dissonance everybody was dealing with. And it was everybody firing darts and saying you're crazy, you're a psycho, and you know, you're out of your mind and whatever. I mean, all of that. That was 2015 and into 16. But right around June, at least for me, from my perspective, after the Chicago skyline thing, I started to see more and more people, because people were watching me. You know, I've got a pretty sizable audience. We've got about the same size. I think we both got about 87,000 or so subscribers. You know, people have seen my journey. And I think what happened was a lot of people at first like, oh, Skiba's lost it. We liked his Nephilim stuff and Babylon Rising. That was cool, but he's lost it. That's
a fact, because I was one of them for a while. Just to be honest, I was.
Yeah,
but
look, I would have done the same. I would question people if they didn't go that way. You know? So I get it. But I think what happened was they saw the abuse that I was taking and that I wasn't backing down. And after a year of just relentless, it's Rocky, 15th round, you know. You know, I just want to go to distance. I don't care if I win. I just want to go to distance. You know, I think some of my audience said, well, shoot, man, this guy's not backing down. I mean, even with all of that, I mean, dude, it got bad, man. I mean, the stress was, I wear stress in my lower back. When I get stressed out, my back starts going. And it got so bad that I couldn't move for over a month. All I could do is lay in bed and like twitch a little bit. Everything hurt. And all of our support dried up. Like nobody was sending me any support checks, donations, or anything, or very few. My book and DVD sales took a nosedive. People were putting Amazon comments on my Amazon on my books. They were like, you know, started reading the book, thought it was cool. Then I found out this dude's a flat earther. Like, how, you know, so they're throwing my books out. You know, everybody thought I was crazy. I had $800 to my name in my bank. That was it. $800 and no promise of anything coming. And at the same time, my wife's father was dying of cancer in our living room. We had hospice. It was a rough time. And meanwhile, everybody's coming against me and calling me names and putting out videos saying that I'm doing the work of Satan and I'm an antichrist. I mean, it was everywhere. Everybody was coming. People were writing, there were letter writing campaigns going out to ban me from conferences. And the only reason I know that is because some of the other guys I've shared stages with said, hey, just so you know, this is what's going around. You know, so it sucked, man. It sucked and it hurt. It hurt bad. Some people saw that. They saw what was going on and they said, well, you know what? If he's willing to go through all that, maybe I'll look into it. And all that time,
that's exactly what I did, Rob, honestly.
Well, I'm telling people the whole time, I'm like, look, just take 24 hours. I don't care how you do it. One whole day, spread that out over a week, whatever. Dedicate 24 hours to at least considering the possibility and looking into it. Because if you do, you're done. You know, I mean, even if you start watching both sides, you start watching, you know, the flat earth stuff that people are putting out and you watch the debunking videos, because you start to realize some of the debunking stuff just isn't cutting it.
Right.
You know, as soon as you open yourself up to critical thinking, you're like, well, I mean, there was a video that was going on, 10 reasons why we know the Earth's a ball or globe or whatever. And this was like the most potent one. People are saying it, 10 reasons why we know. Immediately, I demolished, at least in my mind, 8 of the 10. Just boom. Like, well, here's the other side of this argument that nobody's considering, you know, that the same exact results can be achieved in a different way. It's not the only answer what they're promoting. And I think other people started doing the same thing. And then it's called The Tipping Point. You know, there's a book that came out a number of years ago. It's called The Tipping Point. You know, it's like where all the weight of public opinion is here. And then eventually, you know, it starts to slide. And then you hit this tipping point where it starts to, and then all of a sudden, now the other Bible scholar theologians out there who are taking a stand against this are now taking the same heat that I was taking when I started looking into this. And it felt like a little bit of validation, you know. And it was, I've put out over 100 videos and have at least probably half as many incomplete videos that will probably nobody will ever see, because I just don't have time to do it. I don't have time.
I know the drill.
And I felt like after this tipping point started, I felt like I got the tap on the shoulder, and God said to me, I felt like, well done. It's time to move on. Let's go back to seed. And that's where I'm at now. I see stuff all the time that inside I go, oh, I got to make a video about this. I have to do it. You know? And every time I try, God says, what are you doing? Stop it. Get back on seed. So as of April of this year, my attention has been intentionally moving to be fully directed on seed again, because I think it's ready. And I feel a good momentum right now that when we do a crowdfunding campaign, I think we might be able to do it. So
I'm sure of that. Just FYI, I didn't shut my camera off. About 20 minutes ago, my camera died. I don't want to touch anything because I don't want to kill the live stream by accident, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
But I've been waiting for seed for years, man. So that would be ideal.
You and me both. And you know what? I'm glad it, you know, in my mind, I wanted it to go off in 2010. I wanted to be producing it in 2010. 11, the latest. And after 12, I thought, surely it's going to happen. I am glad that it hasn't happened yet, because the story is going to be so much richer as a result of the journey that I've been on for the last 7 years and all the research. And, you know, as a creative writer, you know, whether you want to believe this, any of this stuff or not, it makes for fantastic science fiction.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. It's
so
well, think about it. Think about it. We're based on what you've said. We're in the exact same ballpark age-wise. Everything that we grew up with. I'm not even talking mythology, biblical writings, anything like that. But all the science fiction that we've grown up with, Terminator, Star Wars, that stuff's all come to pass. It's real.
It's real now. Yeah.
And it seems that the fairy tales and the mythology they were telling us was also really our history, but they didn't want to really tell us, because then again, it all comes out to expose that there is actually a God, and he may be watching us all the time, just like we were told.
Yeah. And I'll say the other thing that, that really hit me in this journey. I have been in some form of ministry all my life, starting with Vacation Bible School in my parents' front yard as a kid.
Nice.
You know, and then when I went from, you know, got older and graduated high school and stuff, I started being asked to help teach Sunday school, and I started the drama ministry in my church. And my buddy and I, Mike, started the God Squad in high school, where a group of believers would get together in a public high school. Every morning before school, we met together under the stairway by the library. We would pray to begin our day, and, you know, everything. And we would actually, our school allowed us to have a Bible study, use a public school classroom on Tuesdays after school to host a Bible study for anybody that wanted to do it. And we carried that forward into the Army. My buddy and I went in the Army together. So we had the God Squad in the Army. And then after that, I became a missionary. You know, I've been in ministry my entire life, and I've seen a lot of fruit from it. I've always been very evangelistic. All of that pales. It's not even comparison. It pales in comparison to the fruit that has come in as a result of this one topic. And a lot of, I mean, I get letters almost every day, handwritten letters in the mail, If not, I get emails and phone calls and Facebook messages and stuff from people, many of which were atheists, that are at the very least buying a Bible and reading it for the first time. Many of them acknowledging there has to be a God, I better get to know him, and a fair number of them coming to Christ as a result of it. What other conspiracy theory, because that's what everybody wants to write this, it's conspiracy theory. What other chemtrails? How many people come to Christ because of chemtrails? 9/11.
Exactly.
How many people come to Christ because of chemtrails? Or 9/11 or Sandy Hook? Or none that I'm aware of. Maybe very few, if that. But this, wow. I mean, because what happens is a lot of these guys become atheists because either the 𝗍𝗵𝗿𝗍 issue, God's a genocidal, prejudice, psychotic maniac.
Exactly.
And, when you wipe that argument off the table, that does bring in a lot of fruit. I started seeing fruit immediately when I went down that path with the 𝗍𝗵𝗿𝗍 and started putting videos out. But this deal, when we were a speck, an insignificant pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan was fond of saying, in a backwater corner of a average galaxy and ever-expanding universe, you are nothing. That's the message. You are insignificant. You are the fortunate byproduct of a blob of goo that got hit by lightning 4 billion years ago or whatever. But when you realize, no, you could be in a terrarium, the Truman Show.
Yep.
All of a sudden, God becomes very close and you become very significant. You are center stage, main attraction, and the peephole is right there, maybe 10,000 or so miles up. Like, whoa, wait a minute. And I mean, all you have to do, if this is new to you out there, just start studying 𝗏𝗏𝗡. Look in the project, high jump and deep freeze especially. Look into the Antarctic Treaty that was assigned immediately after deep freeze. The founding of NASA and DARPA the same year, 1958. The immediate launching of high-altitude nuclear bombs by the United States and Russia.
Operation Fishbowl.
Fishbowl was a huge aha moment for me because I was doing a 𝗍𝗏𝗍𝗍 Giants conference in Lubbock, Texas. And the pastor of the church, Dan Cressman, says, Fishbowl was part of Project Dominic. I said, yeah, I know that. He goes, yeah, but do you know what Dominic means? I said, no. He says, look up what the meaning of the name Dominic is. Looked it up. It means of the Lord. That the name Dominic means of the Lord. So the United States called our launching of nuclear bombs, high-altitude nuclear bombs. I know some people don't think nuclear bombs exist, whatever. Something was being blown up at high altitude. That's a documented fact. And we called it Fishbowl of the Lord. Immediately after whatever happened in deep freeze that caused everybody to pull out of Antarctica, sign this treaty, create NASA and DARPA. What do you do with that? If they're trying.
I cover those topics all the time. NASA and the people that they staffed it with. All of it is evil. That's all they are.
It is. I mean, yeah. Just look into the founding of NASA, Project Paperclip. You get Jack Parsons doing ceremonial sex magic rituals out with 𝗏 Hubbard, out there in the area that became known as Area 51 later. I mean, come on. Speaking of Area 51, I just did a virtual house church episode this past Friday. You might want to check out if you haven't seen it. If you go to Now You See TV YouTube channel, Now You See TV is the YouTube channel, and look up the virtual house church episode that I did with them on Friday. This guy came on toward the end of the broadcast and was showing me screen captures of he was doing a screen capture of Google Earth and moon craters in the Nevada desert. And he was showing that to me because he thought that the video that I posted on May 13th, where I was in Arizona, I went to Cinder Lake. Cinder Lake, and some of my flat Earth presentations, I show this picture of craters on the moon. And I say, this image is related to the Apollo 11 mission. Can anybody tell me where this area is on the moon? And of course, with that introduction, everybody says Sea of Tranquility. I said, no, it's Cinder Lake, Arizona. And then I show pictures of Arizona being blown up with bombs to create the craters to make it look like the Sea of Tranquility. And when I was just in Arizona a few weeks back, I went to Cinder Lake and I stood in the same location that I have a picture of Buzz Aldrin standing in civilian clothes, standing in just off a little ways away from where I was standing, with this mountain range behind him. And then I have another picture of Buzz Aldrin allegedly on the moon with the same mountain range behind him.
That's called Skiba on the moon, correct?
Yeah, Skiba walks on the moon. It's a real short. It's a short video.
I'm going to put that in the chat real quick.
Yeah, it's like 30 seconds. But and if people want to hear the rest of the story on that, they could look up my Amsterdam Flat Earth Conference video that I did. Let me see what it's called, that video. I don't remember. If you just look up Flat Earth Amsterdam. Okay, it's called Biblical Flat Earth Conference in Amsterdam Part 2. Probably
I'll put that link in the description as well.
Yeah, probably about 49 minutes into that episode, into that conference, I talk about this, and I show the image of Buzz Aldrin and Cinder Lake and Buzz Aldrin on the moon. And so if you watch that lecture and compare it to the 30-second video when I was there you go. So,
the lengths that they've gone through to fool people, and no one, why would they do it? There is only one answer. It's to deny the existence of God. They've gone through every single thing they can to get people to sin in the most unbelievable ways, and people are just eating it up, and they don't see the forest for the trees. It's amazing to me.
I watched the reposting you did, the mirror of Chris Pinto's video on the, what's his name? The child molester guy.
Oh, I don't remember.
You just posted it just recently.
That's okay. I still don't remember. I have the memory of a field mouse, Rob.
Well, whatever. I mean, with the Pizzagate and everything going on out there, the horrendous evil that is taking place out there. I mean, it'll kill you if you keep just looking into it. Will kill you.
Right.
I mean, it's so evil.
They don't care anymore. They
don't care.
They've realized they've reached the point where people aren't paying attention to anything. They're not hiding in the shadows anymore. They don't care what we think, because they could spin everything with the media that they own now. It's crazy, man.
It is crazy.
In just our lifetimes, Rob. We're not that old, brother. Seriously. Look how drastically they have turned the tide.
Yeah, it's the Kinsey syndrome, how and why Pizzagate became pedophilia.
All right, my mistake. I thought you were saying Ken C, not Kinsey. Yeah, my bad. You got that Boston accent. I can't understand a word.
Yeah, no, you got the accent. I was in Chicopee.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm in an accent-free zone in Chicopee.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Western Mass is pretty decent.
Yeah, you got the pack the car over there where you live, and you got the New Yorkers and the Jersey.
Oh, I don't know about that. That sounds gross. We do park our car here once in a while, though.
The Kinsey syndrome. I just watched it yesterday.
I put that up about 4 times, and YouTube keeps finding all sorts of reasons to pull it down.
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah. I mean, one of the things that I realized that, look, if this flat Earth stuff is true, then you can never, ever trust NASA or anything coming from them. You cannot trust our government, which you should already know by now anyway. And you certainly can't trust mainstream media. That's the propaganda machine pushing all this stuff. And you also posted a video recently, Television Will Kill You, with a patent to prove it, about the black screen scrying and all that. And I had actually written a script that was similar to what you're talking about there, called The Protean Field, back in 2009, which was the precursor to Seed. Yeah, man. I mean, there's stuff going on right now.
It's insane.
And that's what made me wonder, like, okay, for 500 years, this whole flat Earth thing supposedly has been settled. So why now, in the 21st century of all times, is this coming out and resurfacing again, and actually being taken seriously by some people anyway? I've asked that question many times myself, and the only conclusion I could come to is that something big is coming. Something really big. I don't know what. Alien invasion, whatever, I don't know. Because I'll tell you one thing, or 2 things. Flat Earth eliminates any possibility of evolution. Evolution goes out the window.
It throws away all their best nonsensical, you can't prove theories.
All of it goes out the window. Evolution is demolished, and with it goes ancient aliens. Because now we don't have, because even evolution has run its course. In the scientific, in the honest, intellectually honest scientific community, they have abandoned evolution. They are going for panspermia now, which is guided into intelligent design evolution, that ancient aliens seeded this planet, and evolutionary, Darwinian evolution took place after that through their guided science. But all they did is push the problem further out and then make aliens or gods. So with all of that and Ancient Aliens TV series and all the other stuff, out there promoting the Anunnaki and whatnot, I wouldn't be surprised if we're headed for disclosure in the very near future and something huge is coming that, for me, I'm not going to be deceived by. Because I said that my Bible is my compass in a sea of lies. And if this is what my Bible says, then let God be true and every man a liar. I can't explain what the sun's doing. I can't explain lots of things.
Right.
And I don't care anymore, because I've learned that for every so-called proof that I think I find, like I said before, there'll be a 50 to 100 but guys that will refute it. So what? Now I'm like, it's a matter of faith. Either way, because if you believe in the spinning heliocentric globular Earth and an ever-expanding universe, the only reason you believe that is because you went to public school, you watch TV, you watch movies, and you believe NASA, period. Because there's only been 550-something people in the whole of all of humanity that have allegedly gone to space. And of those 550 people, most of them are from the United States and Russia, two countries notorious for lying, not telling the truth, and keeping secrets. Most of those people of the United States and Russia that went were in the military, which is good at keeping secrets, and or are in secret societies, which are good at keeping secrets.
And both of them, both the military and secret society, their main prerequisite is that you have to have the ability to be taught, schooled, and brainwashed for the most part.
And not question orders.
At all. Or you're weeded out and gone.
Bingo. I mean, look, I don't even kill bugs, man. My wife freaks out. She sees a spider. I go get a cup and an index card and I go let it outside. That's me. I don't like killing stuff. I'm an artist. I create things, and I would hate it for somebody to destroy the stuff I create. He's a creator. He created something living. If you study an ant and just how intricate that thing is, that's a beautiful work of art. Why would I kill it? Unless I have to. Right. But here I am in the Army, gung-ho, graduated, distinguished honor graduate of boot camp, and, like, rah-rah hardcore bayonet training, slashing tire tubes that are dressed like human beings, going psycho, like, and I'll never forget the image that I have in my head of the infiltration course where, you're shooting stuff, you're shooting targets to represent people, you're climbing over berms, you got your bayonet attached to your weapon, and I'm slicing and slashing and stabbing hardcore. The drill sergeant sees me, and he goes, "You are one motivated soldier."
Absolutely.
Yes, drill sergeant.
Yep, dude, I was fast track infantry, Sand Hill, and Fort Benning, Georgia. Excuse me. No, I was all about it. But I was also probably one of the most push-up doing candidates ever. You know what I mean? I just couldn't listen, but I did everything they asked really well. So our stories are very, very, very parallel.
Well, what is it? Article 15, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's going back. That's a way back machine right there. But you don't question orders. And so in that mindset, when I was that guy, if you told me, "Hey, listen, your country needs you. This is a matter of national security. You're going to have to maintain a lie for the rest of your life, but your country needs you to do it." Where do I sign up?
That's that. And plus, there's plenty of people that did do that and then said, "You know what? Humanity's more important. Something crazy, terrible always happens to them," and they disappear. So that reinforces that signing an oath that you took. That's how they keep a secret.
I got two words for you, or two words, two names: Gus Grissom.
Yep.
And his other two buddies.
Yep. He hung a lemon on that spacecraft, and then boom. Imagine that. Imagine inside a capsule they burned him. I mean, that's unbelievable.
That they changed the hatch. It used to open outward. They changed it so that it opened inward. And
which is totally nonsensical. Totally nonsensical.
And they pressurized it with like just massive amounts of pressure and absolutely pure oxygen. All it took was a static spark. And Gus Grissom's own son, to this day, maintains that NASA murdered his father.
Right.
And because he came out, he did an unauthorized press conference that said we are a minimum of a decade away. And this is like towards the tail end of the 60s, you know, 60s, somewhere, I forget when it was, 68 maybe, whatever it was. He said, you know, we're at least a decade away. There's no way. You know, and if you listen to the recording, he's like, they can't even communicate from the rocket ship to the tower on the pad. He's like, you know, if we can't communicate between two towers, how are we going to get to the moon? You know, count 30 seconds later, and the dude's screaming and he's dead.
Yep. That's how they do it.
And if you look at the press conference with Apollo 11's crew, man, I got to tell you, man, I feel for those guys. It looks to me like for the first several minutes, 10, 15 minutes or whatever it is, that this looks like three good, God-fearing maybe, you know, perhaps, at any rate, patriotic men that hate the fact that they're having to lie.
Right, right. It's exactly what it looks like, and that's why none of them will ever. How do you not remember what it was like on the moon? You went to another planet. Oh, I don't. You know what I mean? They
yeah, like a couple of weeks ago. You know, because some of these press conferences weren't that long afterwards. You know, months or whatever. You would never get me to shut up. I told you I'm passionate about things, man. If I was on the moon,
another planet, Rob. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is, you do videos I've seen on MK Ultra and mind control and stuff, and it's interesting to me that the MK Ultra program started in the 50s, went all the way through the 60s, and ended the same year that the Apollo program ended, coincidentally, right? And if you watch the no, they say officially ended. We know it's still going on in other fashions, but if you watch that press conference, the beginning of it, they look like somebody shot their dog and they just found out that they were adopted stepchildren and that Santa Claus is not real and the tooth fairy, you know, like everything's horrible. But then he said, and now we'd like to show you some slides to remind ourselves, right, of what happened. And as soon as the slide presentation starts, all three of these guys are clicking on all cylinders. They're extremely animated and totally different people. It is my opinion that those were the Manchurian Candidate triggers. Triggers,
yeah, it makes sense. And this stuff, stuff is real. They show it to us in movies ad nauseum. I mean, that's how they communicate with us. They verify to the awake ones and they reinforce to the sleeping ones using movies, magazines, all that crap. You know what I mean? It's definitely a real thing.
Have you seen the movie Project Avalanche or Operation Avalanche? I think it's called.
I haven't.
Okay, you need to look it up. I think you could find it on Amazon maybe and watch it. Operation Avalanche. It's a fictional movie made to look like a documentary that was done during the Apollo program. So it recently came out. It was recently made, independent film, meant sort of like a Blair Witch Project type of style. But it's these guys, and they're the ones that figure out that we're not really going to the moon, and that why NASA has to fake it. And there was a brilliant statement in the movie where the main character says, look, we don't need to convince the American public that it's real. We need to convince Walter Cronkite that it's real. And it was a brilliant statement because everybody looks to him as their source for truth. And if he believes that it's real, then his own passion will come forth and convince everybody else. And I'm going, what a brilliant.
Yep. Because
and he wouldn't have to be in on it. He would not have to be in on it. He would have to believe that it's real.
When we were kids, I mean, they really did reinforce the fact that it wasn't real unless you heard it from Cronkite or another anchorman, or if you heard it on the television. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And then they just flipped it over and said, we can say whatever we want because these people aren't even paying attention anymore.
They'll believe everything. And the PSYOP, I believe, began with War of the Worlds, when Orson Welles did that radio broadcast.
Oh my God. I was just talking to Mrs. RFB about that the other day.
If you missed the 2-minute disclaimer or whatever at the beginning, I have it. I have the book on it and I have the CD of it. And if you missed the intro and your mindset was, I'm going to come home from work, turn on the news like I always do, listen to the weekly report like I always do. To you, that box was your source for truth of what's going on in the world. And if you missed the disclaimer that this is a play, you believed it. And the brilliance of it was they described the aliens the description they gave was basically the same as that of the water towers. And so you're listening to this on the radio, you're like, oh my God, you look out the window, you see the water tower that's been there for 50 years, and now you're flipping out because your mind tells you that's a Martian, you know, and people went crazy. That was a psyop, in my opinion, to test this. And then what they said was, okay, now we know how the public's going to react to aliens, so we've got to work on this so they don't have the chaos. And then all through the 50s, you had all the B movies, you know, Martian Attack.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get to the 60s, you get Star Trek, and you have 𝗵𝗿𝗄, and the national anthem playing every night at station close, right? When the three big channels, ABC, NBC, CBS, went off the air at midnight or whatever, and they would play the national anthem. You've probably seen the video where they had the words going across the screen, but words that we can now see by slowing the video down and digital editing, subliminal messages being beamed in your head every night, you know, and 𝗵𝗿𝗄 taking place at its height through the Apollo program. At the same time, the public's doing LSD, marijuana, free love, free sex. Everybody's on drugs during the entire time that we're supposedly walking on the moon. Come on.
It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. The powers that be, the people that invent things, they don't invent things like, we really care about the people, let's entertain them. They were trying to see into other dimensions with these things and figured out they could transmit everyone's opinion to them through a talking head, which is why we have 2,000 or whatever it is stations now. These guys, you got to, I hate to do it, but you got to give it to them because the agenda has been brilliant, because people are going to defend their own attackers against the people trying to wake them up, which is exactly what they do right now. It's staggering.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people, they look at YouTube channels like yours and mine and others out there. They're trying to investigate truth. They're calling us fake news and everything. Look, the fake news is on NBC, you know, CBS, CNN, you know, Fox. Pick one. I don't care. It's all the same. It's all garbage, man.
Without a doubt.
When I unplugged from that, and I used to be like one of those just typical Americans watching all that stuff. When I unplugged from all of that, mainly because I had to, because I couldn't afford it, all of a sudden I woke up like and realized I had stepped out of the matrix, and I started to watch people watching TV and seeing that they are literally hypnotized.
Right.
They have droned out, man. You just go watch people watch TV.
Children and elderly are specifically susceptible to it, but it happens to everybody. There's a reason they're sitting there and staring. People are watching the new thing. I was just talking about this last night. The newest thing is reality shows are even on the pet channel, because people would rather watch other people doing something than do anything. It's crazy, but it's real.
How pathetic is that? Instead of having a dog to play with yourself, you tune into the pet channel to watch somebody else play with their dog.
Or you can get a robot dog, which is just as much fun. And it watches you the whole time, which is awesome. So
yeah, I mean, I went by, we have a neighborhood pool here, you know, and I went by there and there were a bunch of teenagers sitting in the lounge chairs at the pool, every one of them on their phone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's been amazing. And it's funny because, you know, you go all the way back to, I can't think of his name, John D. And the scrying mirrors, the crystal balls, the scrying mirrors that they used to conjure, they used to transmit the talk. We're on one right now. Everyone's carrying one in their hand. It's just well played. I mean, I guess when you're getting your information from other dimensional beings that are pretending that you're your friend, you're going to come up with some really great ideas, but I don't know to what end.
Here's my mandate, and maybe you and your audience can pray with me on it, but I enjoy the superhero movies. You know, in fact, I'm secure enough of my manhood to say that Wonder Woman was freaking awesome. I gotta say
Linda Carter was hot. So there's that.
Well, no, I'm talking about the new one, man. The new one that just came out. Yeah, the new one just came out. I mean, yeah, Linda Carter was hot, but that was a cheesy show. But the movie that just came out, just like this past weekend, awesome. But you know, I went to see Thor. I think it was the first. It was either the first or second. I think it was the first one. And I really enjoyed it. And I came out of there and I'm like, man, you know, when I go to the movies, I go to be entertained. But if I like the movie, I'll go back and see it a second time, because as a filmmaker, I want to know why I liked it. Was it the writing, the acting, the special effects, the music, all of it? Why did I like it so much? So the second time I'm going to analyze. And when I went and saw it the second time, I was grieved, because I was like, wait a minute. The message of this movie is the Son of God saves the world. The problem is it's the wrong son of the wrong God. Son of Odin, right? Thor. And I'm like, God, you know, I came out of, and I'm like, here's a movie made for, I think it was like $130, $150 million. Gross is close to $1 billion, you know? And I'm like, man, I mean, is Fireproof and Facing the Giants the best we can do? Lord, you know, with the same message as Christian filmmakers, the same message. We have the same message. Son of God saves the world. But all of our movies are made for, if we're lucky, if we got $1 million budget.
Right.
And usually, because we don't have a budget, we don't have the production value, and we can't afford the good actors, you know. So I was like, man. And I felt like the Holy Spirit said to me, you have got to become as good at telling the truth as they are at telling lies. And so that's when I started, well, okay, how has the devil been so effective at capturing mainstream media, and as a result, capturing culture? All culture. As a missionary, I could go to I was in the jungles of Northeast India, people living on houses on stilts, you know, bamboo, right? And through an interpreter, I can say, do you know where the phrase "May the Force be with you" comes from? And they all know it.
That's crazy.
Do you know who Jesus is? Huh? Who? What? You know? So, and George Lucas even said it. He said, the church, which used to be all powerful, has been usurped by film. And by that, he meant that he was conveying the power that media has over culture, that the church has lost. And so I'm going, okay, I have got to become as good at telling truth as the devil is at telling lies. So my prayer, and I would ask that you and your audience would pray with me on this, is that he will help me to be able to do that efficiently, effectively, and to find the other writers out there. This is a call. If you are a writer that knows, already has Final Draft software, knows how to properly format a script, so I don't have to teach you that has some experience in all of that, and has some awareness of the stuff that I talk about, so you can get into my head. I need a team of writers. I got to produce 72 episodes. I'm not going to write 72. I don't want to write 72. I want other creative input with me to do it. But we have got to understand that you cannot preach to an audience that's going to a venue to be entertained. It doesn't work. People don't go to the movies to be preached to. They go to church to be preached to. People do not serve to episodic television to be preached to. They could watch TBN if they want to be preached to. They watch episodic television and they go to movies because they want to be entertained. But yet the devil's preaching to you all the time. But he's
all the time. I can't. You're right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But he's not doing it the way we preach. He's putting compelling images on the screen that is preaching to you without being preachy.
Right.
So I've got to do the same thing. If Seed is going to accomplish the goal, the mandate that I feel like I have been given for it. So, I mean, that's the challenge, man, I call it seed for a variety of reasons. One of which is that I'm just planting seeds. I'm not going for the harvest. You know, I'm going to plant seeds that the savvy audience that's watching this, if they're aware of my research and the research of others out there, Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, L.A. Marzulli, and lots of others, that they could then water those seeds with their friends and family that are watching, hopefully, this really cool science fiction TV series. They can water those seeds, and through the relationship they have with their friends and family, because conversion comes through relationship, not through gimmicks. That's what I learned as a missionary. You know,
I know somebody. I know somebody that knows exactly what you know. That is a huge talent as far as movies. I'm sure you know who he is. ODD TV.
Oh yeah, I love the guy.
He's phenomenal. I've got a chance to meet him in real life. You know.
Yeah, he's going to be at the International Flat Earth Conference. It's happening in November. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I am. I've had a few people mention it, but I think it's a little bit too far away. I'm having a couple of issues right now, so.
Yeah, no, it's in November.
Then I didn't. I got the wrong date. I thought it was August, man.
No, it's in November.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, so he's going to be there. I'm going to be there. A lot of other people are slated to be there as well. I'm looking forward to meeting him, definitely. I mean, here's a guy, you know, kind of a rap artist, musician guy, agnostic maybe at best.
Oh, he knows. He knows. He just won't say it.
He does now, because I've listened to him talk on other shows. He's like, you know, I was really resistant to God and all that stuff, but, you know, he's watched my videos. He's watched other videos. He sees what the Bible says, and he's paying attention. You know, and he's getting it. And there's another guy who really he doesn't. Well, let me say it this way: 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗲. I don't know if you know him. He's written several. He's written several awesome Christian fiction novels about giants. Really, really talented guy. He's written some other really good movies, scripts, and stuff too. Did a movie called "To End All Wars" with 𝗲𝗏𝗍𝗲 Sutherland. Fantastic movie. And in that movie, it had the most powerful redemption message I think I've ever seen in a movie without preaching. So he gets it. It was about a prisoner of war. It's a prisoner of war movie about these soldiers that were held in a Japanese prison camp. I think in the Philippines or someplace. Really good movie. And he gets flat Earth. He's not a flat earther. He'll tell you, I'm not a flat earther. But his books that he wrote that deal with the biblical timeline are written from a flat earth perspective, because at least he has the intellectual honesty to admit and understand that the biblical authors and you know, the Sumerian texts, all of the ancient, for 4,000 years, everybody believed, 2/3 of human history, everybody believed that we were in a terrarium. You know, so he wrote it from their belief system to be authentic to the ancient narrative. But that's, I don't care if he believes in flat earth or not. He understands the ancient narrative, and he understands the giants, and he's a very talented scriptwriter. So I'm really lobbying to try to get this guy. You know, I'm friends with him. He's just committed to other projects right now. But when I'm funded, when I mean, this guy's got to make a living too. So everything I've done with Seed so far has been a passion project. I mean, nobody's getting paid here.
Right.
You know,
you've been working on it for a long time, man.
Long time. I'm working on the comic book version of it, working on a video game. I finally got some programmers working on the video game, working on the actual fiction novel of it, working on the scripts, you know, lots of stuff. But I've been, for the most part, a one-man show with a few volunteers popping up every now and then. But, you know, volunteers, like, life gets in the way. They got to pay bills, right. You know.
Yep.
So until I'm funded, that's the way it's been. But when I'm funded, I can actually dedicate a talented person like a 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗲, hopefully, and say, hey, bro, look, I've got the money to pay you, you know, scale what you're worth as a union writer. Are you willing to come on board? And, you know, my prayer, my hope is that Brian says yes, because he would be an awesome guy to collaborate with. But if it's not Brian, you know, maybe there's somebody else out there. But he gets it. He understands. He wrote a blog on Machine Gun Preacher. If you've never seen Machine Gun Preacher, great movie. But it's a raw, hardcore movie about this guy with a rough background who becomes a preacher. But I mean, it's got cursing in it. The guy gets out of prison. He has sex with his wife or girlfriend or whoever it is in the car. They don't really show it. It's not gratuitous or anything like that, but you know what he's doing. You know, so there are things in there that you don't consider a Christian movie. But from Brian's perspective, looking at that, he's like, it's authentic to the character. You know, it's real. A guy like that's not going to say, oh, gee whiz, golly, the bad guys are coming, George. You know, he's going to be like, holy bleep, you know, this is blah, 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 you know. You know, it's authentic. It's real. I was in the Army. You live in New England, man. The F word's an adjective for everything. You know,
that's a fact.
It is. I mean, when I was a missionary for 5 years. I came back to Massachusetts because a friend of mine's business that I was a part of helping get started was honored by the Skiba Chamber of Commerce. And so he invited me to be to share in the celebration. And so I went there and I ended up having a reunion with some of my Army buddies and stuff. And they're like, hey, Bob, what have you been up to, man? Haven't seen you in a long time. I said, yeah, I'm a missionary. You know, I've been to, you know, all these countries and stuff. And they're like, wow, no F&S, man. That's effing awesome, dude. Like, and here I am, right? This Christian bubble, you know, ministry for 5 years. And I'm like, whoa, like it just hit me, you know, like, whoa. And then I realized this dude doesn't even know what he just said. You know, it doesn't mean anything. It's just an adjective. You know?
Right. That boils over into the way we drive and everything like that. Road rage is it's just a driving tactic. That's all. It's no big deal.
It's New England, you know.
Absolutely.
And so the only people that care about curse words are Christian hypocrites.
Right. No,
Because
I'm a Christian. I'm absolutely well aware that I'm a Christian and I'm being monitored. And the only thing I hang my hat on is asking for forgiveness constantly because I suck at it, but I try.
Well, we did. Look, I'm a preacher online. People know me and stuff, but I've got language problems. I grew up in New England for 33 years, and I was in the Army. And, you know, these F-bombs come out.
Yep.
And, yeah, I'm always aware of it. I'm always working on it, and I try to hold back. But if I get mad or if I get hurt, it's out before I've even thought about it.
Yep.
You know, I'm just admitted it. I'm human, man. There's nothing special going on here. I'm telling you, you know. But when it comes to like trying to write authentic storylines, look, I'm not advocating, hey, I want Seed to be an R-rated TV series. No, I'm going to try to keep it within the confines of what was acceptable. I'm talking in the 80s for primetime television.
Right. And that bar has been thrown away. So
yeah, that's why I said that time frame. Today, there's a lot more that's considered acceptable that wasn't back then. So I'm trying to keep it. It wasn't uncommon to hear, hell or damn or son of a bee, might come out in an episode of MASH or something.
MASH,
right? So. But yeah, I mean, the characters have to be authentic, and so when you got a bunch of Special Forces Army guys in a cave being attacked by a 𝗲𝗟,
yeah, they're not saying, "Darn it, I wish he'd stop doing that, hitting us with bolts of lightning." That's
golly, gee whiz, we better run.
Right.
So there might be some colorful language and a fair amount of violence, but I mean, and you're not going to see nudity or anything like that. But let's just say Seed will be PG.
Perfect.
To be authentic.
I just saw this in the comments, and I gotta address this. There's one fella that's saying, God gives me everything I need for my channel, so forth and so on. I would never ask for money. You have to understand, we live in a system that if you don't have money, you're probably going to prison or you'll be dead soon. It's just how it is. In order to spread the word, especially on the scale that Rob's talking about, I know this project personally that he's talking about. I've been waiting for it for years. It takes money, and that's all there is to it. So say what you must, but it is what it is. Yeah. We didn't invent this system. We're just trying to fight it on its terms.
Any TV series that somebody might watch, I guarantee you, has a minimum budget of $1 million.
Minimum.
Everybody
loves
Raymond,
man.
Everybody Loves Raymond is a comedy show that I enjoy. It's a 30-minute sitcom. Raymond, just the actor, Ray Romano, towards the end of the series was getting was getting paid, like I think it was $1.3 or $1.8 million was his salary per episode.
Per episode. Imagine that.
That's Ray Romano. That's not including the salary of everybody else and the production of the show. Now, I'm definitely not going to go that route because I'm going to have no-name actors. Many actors become name actors because they started as no-name actors on TV shows. So, and they do that to save your budget. But I mean, if you've watched X-Files or Fringe or Battlestar Galactica or any kind of show that would be comparable in the genre that I'm doing, you're looking at $2 to $3 million budgets. Lost, the TV series Lost, the premiere episode, the pilot episode alone cost $10 million. That's just the fact. If you watch the credits at the end of a TV show or a movie, I mean, watch Wonder Woman, any superhero movie, the credits are going like crazy. That's why it's a $100 million movie.
Right.
You had to pay all those people union scale minimums at least. And if you've got a name actor, you got to pay that. And, a big producer or director that gets a pretty good cut. Me, I'm going to do my best to either do non-union or stay within the confines of the low end of the union scale and let everybody know up front, look, this isn't a big budget show, but I want to make it look like a big budget show within a small budget confine.
Well, it's a perfect I've heard a lot of things in this life, especially in this truth community, but what you said about media, it's just a fact. Satan is definitely preaching, but he's using the easy things. Do drugs. Everybody does that. Have sex. It's no big deal. Abortion, No worries. It makes perfect sense. And in order to fight that, you'd have to come back on a comparable scale. It makes perfect sense, man.
Yeah, if I come back
like that before.
If I come back with a cheesy homemade TV series that I shot with my camcorder with my friends,
it ain't going anywhere.
No one's going to watch it.
Yep. Sad but true, but that's just how it is. So
these people who are under the delusion that you don't need money, they need to wake up. They're in la la land.
It's true, man.
And you know, I'm not all about money. If people accuse me that all the time, Skiba's all about money. I'm like, you are on crack. You are absolutely insane. First of all of my information, all of it, at the very least, 98% of it, is all online for free. I even read my books to you on my radio show, for crying out loud. So yeah, you could buy my book or my DVD if you want to, but my DVDs are on YouTube, either on my channel or ripped from other people ripping my DVDs and putting up there that I don't go after for copyright. It's all out there for free. You know, so if you think I'm all about the money, explain why I'm putting everything out for free.
Right, and I can actually bolster that from my own experience. I've gone to a couple of the conventions with the in crowd when I thought everything was fine, but when I realized when they're on stage preaching that Sunday is a great day to go to church for everybody, but when they come down, they're like, yeah, don't go to church on Sunday. Actually, the Sabbath is Saturday, so forth and so on. But they don't do it because, again, it's career suicide. Going to the flat earth, that's not how you make the money, brother.
No,
you know what I'm saying? You had the wheels rolling, and then you put it. So I'd have to agree completely.
Coming off Preacher Rapture or not being King James only or coming against Christmas, all these things, you know, preaching Sabbath, they are career-ending deal breakers for a lot of people. So look, you know, I put all my stuff out for free. You know, the only time I've asked for money is like when my wife's husband, that's me. No, when my wife's father was dying and we didn't have the money to bury him, you know, or when I fell down the stairs and busted my foot in 3 places and I had to have $18,000 foot surgery and didn't have health insurance. You know, these are the few times that I've had to put a cry out for help, say, hey, you know.
Yeah, that's life, man. That stuff happens, and the truth community's health plan isn't very good. So there's that.
Otherwise, yeah, I've got donation buttons on my website, and you can contribute if you want to. And thankfully, some people have. And to those people, you know who you are. Thank you. You have saved my life on many occasions. You know, I couldn't do what I do without you. So, you know, I absolutely, and I failed to show my appreciation as much as I should. I know that, and I apologize for that. But, you know, thank you guys, those of you who have supported. But the harsh reality is everything costs money. We're talking on Google Hangout, which is free, but the internet's not free. I have to pay the electric bill. You have to pay the electric bill. People say, well, if you're talking about godly things, you know, freely you've received, so freely you should give. Okay, tell me what I got for free. None of these books were free. I've got a huge library of books that I studied and read in order to do the research that I did for my materials. None of that was free. This electricity is not free. Internet's not free. You know, my car's not free. You know, gas isn't free. Nothing is free.
Exactly.
You know, so I put money out, lots of it, to accumulate the knowledge that I did to put videos out for free. You know, so these people, it really gets under my skin, man. When these people,
it's only a few every now and then, but then you get the paid trolls that come in, and it's you and I do the same thing. I mean, you've been doing it a hell of a lot longer. I actually learned by listening to you. I told you, I flipped the dial off for a few months when you went flat Earth because I'm like, oh my God, he went completely crazy. But then after doing some extensive real world testing, I went to every mountaintop in the United States, including the Rockies, the highest mountains I could find, with the P900 and a drone. 19,000 feet up in the air, the horizon that comes right up to meet your eye. If the earth was rounded in any way at all, it would gradually dip off. That would not occur, and it does, period. I live on the Atlantic, brother. You can see ships that are 60 miles out to sea. Hit them with a Nikon, they come right back in, hull meeting the water. So it is what it is. I forgot what I was even saying just then, but whatever.
Well, about, you know, dealing with the trolls out there that go.
Because NASA has one of the most well-organized, quick-to-react armies of trolls I've ever seen. Go after NASA, you're getting trolls. If you start talking about holistic doctors dying off in groups once a week, you get trolls, and then you might even get a little electronic harassment, and that definitely does happen. So that's a fact. I never talk about it. Once in a while I'll mention it, but they definitely have their ways and means. So it's not conducive to a long life or a prosperous life, I'll say.
Well, yeah, and going back to the impact of media worldwide, you know, Star Wars was made for, I believe, about $13 million, which is unthinkable today when you think of what they did with that first movie and the impact that it had in the world. You know, nowadays movies, they're on the low end $75 to $150 million, and they're grossing billions of dollars, which they then turn around and make more movies for hundreds of millions of dollars, which gross billions of dollars. This is, you know, the devil throws all of the resources in the world at his people to get his message across. Christians don't do that.
No.
They give their money to the world willingly. Like I just said, hey, I went to see Wonder Woman, so I just fed the machine. You know, guilty as charged. Everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, but then when a Christian says, hey, I'm trying to do a TV series and the budget's $1.5 million per episode. Oh, Skiba's all about money and blah, blah, blah. You should have money. Like, what? Wait a minute. You didn't go psycho on Steven Spielberg for the last movie he made or anybody else, you know, for the budget that they had. You know, and if I've got to become as good at telling the truth as the devil is at telling lies, then we need the resources to do that.
That's a great, like I said, that analogy right there is perfect. I've never thought of it that way. All the time I've been doing it, I just never thought of it that way. It's perfect. You're absolutely right, especially in the society that we live in now, because information, entertainment, and it better be quick. You better keep them on their seats or they're leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it this bad in my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, movies have gotten so bad now that it's just one big action sequence that you don't care about because you know nothing about the characters and you don't care. You know,
that's true.
You know, some of these movies, it's like you got a 30-minute fight scene that the special effects are amazing, but you're bored to tears and you're like looking at your watch, like
looking at your phone. That's what's good. That's what's good. They just pull up the scrying mirror real quick. There's instant entertainment at all times, and it keeps them looking down, which is ideal. Don't look up. The signs will be in the star, moon, and sun. Nobody looks up.
Even when you have an IMAX 3D screen in front of you blasting images at you, you're reverting.
Boring. It's unbelievable, man. I never thought I'd live to see something like this. I never thought I'd get to the age where I said, I can't believe what kids are doing these days.
Kids today.
That really happened.
Kids today. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, but it is what it is. This is the journey that I'm on. You know, some people, when I was in the in crowd and really looking at end times stuff, I'll say this, you are very tempted to believe, and you do believe, that tomorrow's the end of the world. And it looks like it. It does. But when you take a step back out of that, like I just came back from the first vacation I've taken in a very long time. It was my 10th anniversary next month. My sister just recently had her 20th anniversary. My parents' 50th was in February. So, you know, it was 50, 20, 10. We all went down on a family vacation down to Jamaica.
Nice.
And had an amazing, relaxing, awesome, unbelievably fantastic time. And my eyes have been open to some things, you know, and now I'm seeing the average person, I don't care where you go, the average person just wants to love and be loved, period. You know, and that's the majority. And when you pull yourself out of end times research, where everything is doom and gloom, transhumanism, scrying, mind control, that's happening. Pedophilia, that's happening. You need to be aware of it. You need to take a stand against it. It's happening. But it's not the entire picture. It's not the whole world. And that has led me to believe, yeah, we are seeing the signs of the end. No question. We are taking the steps into the end times. No question. But we're not at the stage where everyone has only evil continually in their heart and mind, which is what took place in the days of Noah. And Yeshua said the last days before he comes would be like those days. And as long as there's still a lot of good in the world, and there is a lot of good in the world, we're not there yet. So that's what people, some people look at me and they say, dude, like the end of the world's tomorrow. Why are you doing a science fiction TV series? Who cares? Right? The end of the world's tomorrow. The apocalypse. You know, Damascus is turning into a ruinous heap. The rapture's coming. We're all getting out of here. Why are you doing? I don't believe that. I actually believe I will die of old age before the second coming. I hope I'm wrong. I'll be happy to be wrong. I'll be high-fiving my preacher rapture buddies all the way if I'm wrong. Woo! I just don't believe it. I don't think that that's, I hope I'm wrong. But I do believe that I will likely die of old age before the second coming. And if that's the case, whatever the case may be, we are told to occupy until he comes. And I believe that he gave me this vision. It didn't come from, I'm not that creative. He didn't come from me. So with that in mind, I believe I have time, because if seed's going to happen, it's a minimum of 6 years of dedicated production time.
Right.
So in my mind, I've got at least 6 years left. If he in fact gave it to me, and if it's in fact is going to happen, then he's going to bring the resources, the people, the money, everything. And it's already sort of starting to happen. So I look at the signs of what appears to be the support for this project mounting, and I say to myself, well, if he's bringing the resources and we do get the budget, then we're going to be in production, which means I got at least 6 more years. You know.
I hope you're right, brother. I hope you're right. All right, Rob, yeah. I've taken up almost 2.5 hours of your life. So yeah, I am going to, it happens. I mean, we're going to have to do this again, because this was just too easy. Absolutely too easy.
I need to get you on my show.
That's fine. That's fine. I've never heard your backstory like that, and I've always wondered, you know what I mean? I think I tried to get a hold of you once last year, but then I kind of let go of it. But I understand. I mean, I've had 𝗚𝗵𝗿𝗲𝗚, Anthony Patch. People get really busy. And once you're out here like we are, it's unbelievable, the amount of emails, the amount of messages. And it's so difficult to get back to them, because doing this in the first place takes up a lot of your time. Doing that would take up all of your time, and it just can't happen. So,
yeah.
At any rate, is there anything pressing? I was putting up your YouTube channel, your website, and your Facebook, but for some reason, at exactly an hour, my camera went out. So I got to figure out what the deal is with that. But I didn't want to touch any buttons and screw this up. So these guys wanted you on here really bad, and you were gracious enough to come. So I appreciate it. Anything I can do to help you, Rob, just hit me up. It's easy.
Well, thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. Hopefully I delivered what people were looking for. But yeah, man.
Yeah, you definitely did. We've been holding a good, steady audience here for a long time.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for tuning in, and you know, stay on the quest for truth. I'm just saying right now that I was gung-ho in research for 7 years, from everything from Babylon to, you know, Nephilim, flattery, all kinds of stuff. But my gears are shifting to now take all of that information and try to distill it. Because here's the thing I found out, man. I could put out all these nonfiction videos where I'm passionate about whatever truth it is that I think I understand. It gets a few thousand views.
Right.
Most of it being heavily criticized by trolls.
Yep.
You know, most of it. I mean, I've realized that there's an extremely vocal minority, and that the majority aren't against me, but they're not. The majority doesn't usually speak up. They're just quietly back there saying, "Wow, cool video." The ones that are vocal are the haters, and they are very vocal. But what I realize is, you know what? If I put all this in science fiction, just put it out there as a cool TV series, nobody's going to complain, because they go into it knowing this is science fiction, for one thing. And if something catches their attention, you know, people get married in Klingon, for crying out loud. they want to join the Jedi Church. This is fiction. This stuff doesn't exist.
Right.
You know? But that's what sci-fi fans do. They embrace the fantasy, you know, whether it's true or not. So I'm going, well, maybe that's the key. Take all this truth and put it in science fiction, you know, and then it reaches millions. It reaches continents.
It's a great idea, man. It's a great idea. So again, anything I can do to help, just reach out.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate the invite, and I'll look forward to connecting with you again in the future. Anytime,
Rob. Anytime. I'm going to jump in the chat real quick and give a few shout outs, and then we're going to pull the plug. Oh my, this is cruising. All right, I'm slowing this chat down for a sec. ODD Reality is here. Nice. Paradigm Apocalypse.
Shout out, man.
ODD's the best, man. He really is. He's got more skills than I have put together at any time of the day. Johnny Shelton. We are the Remnant. Anti-NWO Canada. Darlene, Stacy, Redson. Too many of you guys. That's it. You guys are all great. Richie from Boston and Rob Skiba. We are out.